How much VOC or voice of customer research do you actually need? Hi, I'm Paige from impactcopywriter.com, and I help founders and marketers boost the conversions for their most critical campaigns by focusing specifically on their marketing messages, or as we like to call it, the copy. Part of that process involves doing voice of customer research, which basically means going out into real conversations, investigating or researching real experiences, real people, to get a better, more grounded, data-driven feel of the conversion context. So you understand what actually motivates the right prospects to buy what you're selling. So if you're not doing VOC research, you should. That research is critical to helping you eliminate as much guesswork as possible when you're putting together your marketing messaging. And the less guesses you're making, the more chances you have to actually see conversions earlier out the gate. If you've heard about voice of customer research, but you're still not quite sure what that looks like, you might be wondering, well, how much research do I need? Where should I look? When can I stop researching? And that was a question that recently came across my LinkedIn inbox. Someone asked me, is 2 sources enough for VO research? Here's where I'm looking. I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. When can I stop? So today I'm going to share sort of the thought process I use when doing voice of customer research. And I'm not going to say that it's the only way. There are definitely some solid principles you want to follow. But here you're going to see some solid places to start if you're new to this whole voice of customer research thing. So let's start with the question, how many sources do I need? You might be familiar with the concept data triangulation, which basically means look at data from different sources so you can see if your data is reliable. So if you're hearing that prospects want to grow their business from one source and you hear it from 2 other sources, then you have more confidence that that is a message theme that could strongly resonate with your audience. So it's a good idea to start with 3 sources, right? If you want to set yourself a baseline. Now, when do you stop? How I determine this is when I've looked at multiple sources, so I know that I can compare and see if I'm seeing multiple messages in different places. Once I stop learning new things, then I stop researching. And so it's hard to pin down an exact number of sources, right? Because it just depends on if I keep learning, if I'm still getting really juicy stuff that I can use for messaging, I'm going to keep going. But once I start to see that I'm seeing the same things over and over and over again, I know I've hit my threshold and it's time to actually get into analyzing that data and making a plan for the messaging. Now, it's not only about how many sources, it's also about the types of sources. So let's say, hypothetically, I'm optimizing emails for a sales email sequence to get people to sign up to some program. And so what I really want to look at is, well, why do people sign up and why don't people sign up? So I'm already see 2 core sources here, right? I'm going to look at people who have recently signed up, let's say in the last 30 days, or maybe if that's not a large enough segment, say to survey, then I might look at the last 90 days. So people who have signed up to that program in the last 90 days. That's one of my sources. Another source will be people who opted not to sign up. So that can also be a very great source of figuring out what's holding people back by looking at who actually said no during the last promotion. And so that would be a second source I would look at. If this program had a Facebook group, I would want to go into that Facebook group or whatever community they're using and browse those messages and look for data in that realm as well. I might also dive into some product reviews. I might look at some Amazon book reviews or subreddits. For some businesses can be a really great place to find VOC data. And with these places, I'm looking more further out. If we're thinking about a target, focusing on customers would be the center of the target. People who are leads but didn't convert, they would be a little bit further away from the center, but then we'd have complete strangers. And we're looking at conversations around the same topic but in different places, and that would be more towards the outer rim of that target. Now, depending on what the business looks like, what the business has access to, I'm also going to want to look at other sources like responses to surveys that are built into thank you pages. I might also look at support chats, DMs. If someone's really active on Instagram, then DMs can be a very good source of information if we're having sort of those pre-sales conversations. support chats that you're having on your website with your support reps and your support team, those are a good place to look for messaging insights. So as you can see, you want to make sure you're using multiple sources of data, and you want to make sure you're choosing those sources based on what you're optimizing. And how many you need also depends. You'll want to use the sources of data that are, or as many sources of data that are as relevant to your project as possible, only stopping when you realize you're not learning anything else. And as long as you're learning, keep going. Now, if you've done voice of customer research and you're thinking like, yeah, that sounds all well and good, but I'm overwhelmed. Like, what do I do with all this data? That's more of a, not really a you have too much data problem, because you likely have data that you can use and is going to be vital to the messaging you create. That's more of an organization problem. So I actually store data right now using a spreadsheet where I can capture all the little snippets I save, where I can keep tracks of links, and where I can actually go in and build in drop-down menus where I can start coding that data and attributing themes to specific types of data. And then that's, once I sort that list and I've categorized everything and I've sorted that list, that kind of forms the foundation of how I start analyzing the messaging and organizing everything. So it's in a, you could say neat, organized, structured presentation. And not only for presentation, but also just for usefulness, because you're going to reference that data all the time. So it needs to be easily searchable, it needs to be categorized, and everything needs to be collected easily in one place. Now, there are like Chrome extensions, research tools out there, so definitely you can look into that. I haven't found one yet that I love, but this has inspired me to, I need to look again. I hope you got some new insights or ideas or inspiration for your voice of customer research process. And as always, if you need help doing the research, figuring out what that research means for your messaging, and turning those insights into copy that's going to connect and convert throughout your funnel or your flash sale or your launch, let's chat. You can start a project conversation with me over at theimpactcopywriter.com.